Welcome to Doctors of Running Virtual Roundtable, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, explore the art and science of running and the stuff that we're putting on our feet. I'm Andrea Myers, and I'm joined today by Matt Klein. Today we've got two very special guests with us, Shan Riggs and Joshuaine Grant. Hey guys.
Hello.
Howdy.
We are so excited to have them on the podcast. Shan and Josh are in the middle of a pretty epic 3,000-mile journey. Shan is running and Josh is riding the length of the East Coast Greenway, which is a 3,000-mile path that goes from Key West all the way up into Maine to the Canadian border. They're raising money for the East Coast Greenway. It's not finished yet, and part of their run and ride is highlighting the places that definitely could be improved and highlighted the places that are really beautiful and awesome already. So we're really happy to have you guys here. Thank you so much for joining. But first, before we get into their interview, we want to go into our subjective for the week. And our subjective is, how many days per week do you run? You can answer on YouTube down in the comments below. If you're listening on Spotify, you can answer the question there too. Otherwise, you can always send us an email at doctorsofrunningpodcast@gmail.com. So, Shan and Josh, tell me, why are you guys doing this? Why 3,000 miles on the East Coast Greenway?
I'm going to say it's Josh's fault. Uh, it was her idea. But I guess to go back a little bit, I've been doing ultra marathons for quite some time, and I want to say in 2008 or maybe 2009, I did a fundraising long run where I ran from Chicago to Indianapolis for working with called Medals for Metal. And that worked out really well. It was like man runs 200 miles nonstop for charity, and we were able to raise a lot of publicity and money for Medals for Metal. And I've kind of taken that format and done a whole bunch of crazy runs, multi-day things. Tried to do things maybe people either don't do very often or have never done before for a variety of charities, including in 2020 during the pandemic, and there wasn't a lot of work for me. So had time to run across the United States and did that as a fundraiser for Food Share. And if everybody remembers, food insecurity was a real key thing at that moment. And so did that, and that was great. And then Josh and I were sitting around talking about what would be a next adventure. And I think you brought up, like, had anybody run the Greenway before? So I knew the Greenway people because I worked with them on the Rhymacon Relay, which is a relay that an event that the Hartford Marathon Foundation does on the East Coast Greenway. And so it just seemed to make sense. It tied in a lot of things that we've been working with and people we knew, and so we worked real hard to kind of find some time, a lot of time, to be able to do this whole thing. And here we are. We started April 16th in Key West, and we've been moving about 40 miles a day where I'm running, and that's about all I do. I run and eat and sleep.
Sounds about right.
and then Josh has her bike and all of our stuff, and she's working full time, so her complicated than mine most of the time.
Yeah, that's just amazing what you guys are doing. And I know, of course, it varies depending on weather and so many factors, but when do you think you'll make it to the end?
First July.
Yeah,
Wow.
for about 80 days.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we're continuously updating the spreadsheet.
Yes. I was reading about your spreadsheet. I'm very impressed, Josh, and I want to hear more about how you did that in a little bit. But can you tell our listeners where you are right now?
We're in Jersey City.
That's awesome, right outside of New York City, and soon to be in Connecticut and home, right?
Yes, yeah, we plan to get to the border of Connecticut or possibly further tomorrow afternoon, so Monday afternoon.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
We had a couple days of meeting people that were really good friends of the Greenway, and some group events the last couple days. And now we're in Jersey City tomorrow. First thing, we take a ferry over to Manhattan, and then we've been looking forward to this for a while. We go up the Hudson River Greenway along the west side of Manhattan for, I don't know, a bunch of
A
miles
lot of miles.
until
Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful trail.
yeah, and very, very scenic. So it was a sight seeing the Statue of Liberty. We went right today, and kind of surreal that we've come this far, and yet we still have almost 1,000 miles to go. So yeah,
Well, how many miles have you done so far?
around 2,200,
Yes.
Wow. And what's your longest day been?
almost 52 miles.
That's just amazing. So, tell us a little bit about your running background. Of course, you can't just one day wake up and decide you're going to run across the country. So, how long have you been running? How did you get into really long distance running? And then could you tell us how you train for this? Maybe we've got a listener out there who thinks this sounds like an amazing thing to do.
Sure.
So, how how could somebody do that? And how did you do it?
Yeah, well, for me, I did a bunch of sports in high school and things like that, and I was on cross country and track. I was okay, but I wasn't, good enough to run in college. And had kind of just hung up my shoes. I did a few years after college, decided, I should run a marathon just to see if I could. And thought I trained as well as you could for a marathon, and finished it. I broke 4 hours, which was my goal, and felt like about
Nice.
ready. And that was like, check that box. Did that. Don't ever plan on doing that again. Couldn't imagine going farther or faster. And then a few years later, I read a book by Dean Karnazes called Ultra Marathon Man. Um,
Hmm.
a lot of people, if they're familiar with the ultras, have probably seen or heard of Dean. And I was reading it, and I think most people would think that's just out. That's just nuts. And I read it and thought, I bet I could do that. Uh, so
That's
I
awesome.
started getting into ultras and doing 50-mile races, 100-mile races, 24-hour races, things like that. And I discovered that I actually could be pretty competitive with it. So after some a lot of practice and a lot of miles and track workouts and things like that, I was finding myself winning some of these races. So
Wow.
that was kind of how things got started. And as I said earlier, eventually started looking for even farther things. So could I run 200 miles at once, or could we run the length of Illinois, or has anyone ever done this one thing or another thing, and then I traveled all over the world doing fundraisers and things. So that's a little bit of the background. And training wise, the short answer is you got to run a lot. For
Yep.
this particular, it's you got to get your legs used to the pounding. You also have to get kind of comfortable with a decent pace that you can do all day. So
Hmm.
my training in and around Southbury was like 15 to 20 miles on about 5 days a week. And then a couple days a week, I'd do a day of 30 to 50 miles. So whatever that adds up to, more than 100 miles a week,
Yeah.
getting ready for this. And I would try to get back a couple times. And the whole point is to try to be most mornings when I start out. It's about an 30 minute mile for the first 10 or 15 miles, and then kind of slowly slow down and just try to keep as comfortable as possible throughout the day. And when I'm moving, it's typically 8 to 9 minute miles, and if it's hot or hilly, it might be more like 9 to 10 minute miles when I'm running, and then break that up with some walk breaks and things like that. I always tell people that if you do want to do multi-day events, you have to run easy, and I tell people to run as if you're running barefoot. even if you're
Hmm.
like I do, big thick shoes, which we can talk about.
Hmm.
But run like you're landing on nails or landing on glass or something like that, because you're gonna do. My watch tells me I think I do like 70 to 90,000 steps a day, so that's a lot of steps.
Yes, that is. So, of course, we love talking about shoes here. So, what shoes are you running in? How many pairs do you have with you, and how many pairs do you think you'll go through by the end of this trip?
Yeah, so I wear ultras. Do you remember the
Yes, the Torin
uh
and Paradigm.
the
Hmm.
torn and the paradigm? So that's the really
Okay.
thick and the ones that are almost the really thick ones. So the
Yeah.
the whatever those are, and I've been wearing those for a long time. The ultras have the big toe box, and that's a lifesaver for me. When I first started doing really long runs, I was wearing I think Asics or something, and my pinky toe was just it would explode after a day or two. It was really painful. Uh,
Yeah.
so I found some that work. We started off with two pairs. I've picked up two more as we've gone. We're carrying three, and we just ordered two more. So it'll be six total shoes. So about 500 miles per shoe, and I rotate them every day. So I've got that,
Yeah.
and then the other thing that I'm wearing on my feet is Exoskin.
Hmm.
Which I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but they're a toe sock manufacturer, and that's another thing that I I'd always thought that the toe sock thing was kind of a marketing gimmick,
Hmm.
and until I picked some up, I was starting to get a blister on day one of my 2020 crossing, and it was just the thought of having blisters the entire way was kind of
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh my god, this could be the most painful thing ever. So I tried some, and I went the whole way without a blister, which was amazing. And
That's amazing.
this whole time, and this run, it's even more amazing because it's been extremely humid and extremely hot, and
Yeah.
usually it's hard on your feet. And I don't have any blisters, no chafing, so that's
That's awesome.
1,000 miles still to go.
Yes.
So far, so good.
Knock on some wood there. So, Josh, I mean, riding 40 miles a day for days and days on end is not an easy thing either. So, how did you train for this? What are some things that are keeping you going? Um, I read on your blog that you both kind of had a rough winter leading into this, which I think makes what you're doing even more amazing.
Yeah, so as far as training for me, I did a lot less training than Shan. um,
Yes.
I've done a lot of big rides in the past, so I was sort of relying on my memory, my muscle memory, fitness memory, to sort of jump back into shape once we started moving. So it was a bit of a jump start, and we started off with somewhat shorter weeks or shorter days, I guess, for the first week. So low 30 miles. It and I don't have to move very fast. As long as I
Right.
can do a running pace for a while, I'm good. So,
Yep.
yeah. So, but pulling the trailer is a fair amount of work. So we had about 40 to 50 pounds or so. That's kind of an estimate in the trailer. But luckily, most of the East Coast Greenway is somewhat flat, or at least
Pretty flat, yeah.
I think in Connecticut
Yeah.
it starts to get hilly,
Yeah.
but up until now it's been
Yep.
doable. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, tell us more about the trailer. So I don't know if our listeners know yet, but you guys are totally self-supported. Like there's no follow vehicle. So your first run across America, you did have a follow vehicle, right? But
Yeah.
Josh is your follow
Yeah,
vehicle, which
yeah,
is amazing.
it's a lot different logistically. That the 2020 run, I own a camper van. Someone was driving that, and that was really remote too. So, and this is a lot of the times like right now we're basically New York City, and especially since Richmond, Virginia, it's been really urban. But
Hmm.
yeah, we're carrying all our stuff. We're meeting a lot of people along the way,
Yes.
but we're pretty self-reliant, so staying at a whole variety of places as we go. Except for maybe the last couple of weeks, we do have Josh's mom is gonna potentially join us with our RV. So
Yeah, so that could be fun.
Oh,
there
nice.
might be some
That'll be
time.
a nice treat for
Yes,
But
sure.
yeah, especially Josh might not have to carry
the
the
trailer.
trailer the whole
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
So
we'll see.
Yeah.
It might line up. Yeah, yeah. So we started talking about doing this, and it was like, well, I've always wanted to bike across the country. So if you're going to run again, uh, I'm gonna bike with you. We don't need
Hmm.
RV. We don't need a van.
No,
Yeah.
you're the RV. So, what has been the most challenging for you as the support person? Um, I understand you're kind of getting most of the food, and obviously you're carrying everything, and you're working full time during this, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think the most challenging is probably um, the planning, the day to day planning, and keeping track of how far we're going to be going. We've had a lot of people reach out, and when you're in Richmond, give us a call. I know someone here
Yeah.
there. So this is where the spreadsheet comes in because I have to
Uh-huh.
kind of add everybody in as soon as we hear from them. And if I don't, then you kind of miss something. But so I think that's
Yeah.
definitely the most challenging part is just keeping track
yeah,
of each place.
it's been great. It means that we haven't had to stay at hotels the whole time,
Yeah.
and we've met just a ton of great people. But it's been a little tricky to remember and organize and everything. So
Yes. Yeah, because I haven't done anything like this, but I have done like multi-day bike rides where, you're staying in hotels and people want to meet up with you. And sometimes that's the most challenging part is coordinating with the people who want to help you. So having a spreadsheet that helps people know where you're going to be and when is huge.
Yeah, and so with the East Coast Greenway, folks have been really helpful with that. So the
Yeah.
regional kind of managers have reached out to the running clubs and the cycling clubs, whoever's interested, and helping to arrange that. So it's kind of like we can all be at this point. You tell us what time you're going to be there, and that's kind of so from that end, it's really helpful.
Oh, that's great.
yeah, it takes so we're raising money for the East Coast Greenway Alliance, which is a small nonprofit that's helping organize the Greenway. So all these different municipalities, I think there's 450. You have to coordinate all that. They're coordinating mixture of federal, state, municipal budgets to help put all this together. So it's just all these crazy logistics, which is why one of our goals, one, is to raise money for them, for staff and all those things, but also just to point a light to that as well. So the more people we can talk with about what they're doing, and I think a lot of people don't even realize that this place is right in their backyard. So like we were talking
Oh, for sure.
before we started, like even living in Connecticut where the Greenway is a lot, everybody has kind of an idea of what it is or the logos and things. But I think it's helpful to have people really understand what they're trying to do with this 3,000 mile connector.
Oh, absolutely. And just the fact that they're trying to connect, like for example, in Connecticut, we've got like the Farmington Trail, the Cheshire Trail, building some connections between trails that already exist so that people can go further, explore new places is huge. And then it encourages a lot of people to, try to do big sections of it. I think you guys have met some people who are cycling the whole thing. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind
a
of.
couple of people.
Yeah.
And
That's pretty cool.
yeah, and yesterday we met two people. There were 7 people who were the very first ones in 2004 to do it, and we met two of those riders yesterday. And since
Oh, wow.
it's been really key in kind of working to complete new sections. So that was really very cool.
Yeah. As far as
Nice.
no one's run it, and so that was one of the reasons why we're trying to do it. And a lot of people have ridden it, and we've run into some, so it's totally doable. But there's also plenty of sketchy places. I think even for, it's probably even more so for somebody cycling than being on foot. So it's 3,000 miles, but 1,000 of it is protected trail, and the other 2,000 is on roads. Some of those
Oh, wow.
they're highways, some of them are suburban areas. So just a huge variety, and some of those don't have much of a much of a shoulder. And as a cyclist, you kind of, you obviously have to go with traffic, and it's hard to control that traffic coming up. But as a runner, if it gets really sketchy, I can just run in the side ditch, which sometimes I've needed.
Sure.
So, there's definitely a need to continue improving it, and it's going to be a decades long journey, which is, again,
Oh, sure.
help to get attention on it, sustained attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw your posts about Highway 17 in South Carolina, and I've ridden on part of that, and yeah, it is not a favorite place to ride for sure. But then, not so far down the road, you get to some of the most beautiful trails in South Carolina through like Charleston and Mount Pleasant. So hopefully they'll be able to expand that, right?
Yeah, I've heard people describe the trail as kind of the urban version of the AT.
Yeah.
Some merit to that. You don't need to, if on a bike, you don't need to be able to climb mountains or run over roots and rocks, but you do need to be, good traffic.
Right. Yeah.
For me as a runner, I'm not especially good at dodging roots and rocks either. I'm more of a flat road traffic dodger myself, so it just fit into my specialty.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to mention is Matt does very long distance running, and his wife happens to be a professional ultra runner. So I wanted to give Matt a chance to ask you guys some questions. I've got a ton more, but Matt may have some more interesting questions based on his personal experience running very, very far.
Yeah, I think it's more getting dragged into what my wife is doing, going, "Oh my God!" I think I probably complain a lot more, but my wife is not nearly as wrong. So I think my questions kind of come around, like, those who are interested in getting into this, kind of some of the surprises that you find just in ultra marathoning in general, because you've got both the background of doing ultra marathons, right? The traditional, 50K, 100K, 100-mile, but this is a very different event. I'm wondering if there's some similarities, or what's the phrase I'm looking for? Just some kind of like things to be aware of if you're getting into this in terms of being a runner, and what this might entail if people are interested in making that transition.
Yeah, I'll say that it's a totally different mindset for when I do a race versus something like this. For this kind of thing, first off, we are doing it for charity, and often have sponsors and things like that, and so it's more important to finish than anything, and so making sure you don't injure yourself. Being careful not to get blisters and chafe spots that are just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and stuff like that. And plus, if we're going to do something for 2 to 3 months, I kind of want to enjoy it. And so we want to be able to have time in the evening to hang out, have time to talk with you guys. If I'm doing a race, it's more like I want to get to the end with absolutely nothing left. And if some toenails come off, like, that's just part of the experience. Because I'm going to stop at the end and probably wait until those things get a little bit better. So I have to find something that's sustainable. I've done things like run 60 plus miles a day. A group of us did the length of Illinois, and and for me that was about the limit of my ability. And it was very painful, and I couldn't imagine trying to do that for 2 months. And so when we decided to do something this epic, it's more, we could try to do 50 miles every day or 60 miles every day, but let's do 40 to 45, and that's challenging. It's hard, of course. I'm tired every day, but it's doable. It means that Josh has time as well. It means we're not just running and sleeping.
So what I'm hearing is that regardless, these are two very different things as you're doing an ultra marathon race versus these multi-day or even multi-month things. But one of the most important keys I'm hearing is pacing. About going, you could go do 60 miles a day, but then how long that's going to last is a different story. And I would say the same thing in terms of a lot of people that maybe have done a 5K or a marathon. It's very, very different from doing an ultra marathon. Is you have to pace yourself, and if you go out too hard early, that's going to make the rest of this even rougher than it needs to be. So pacing's really important. Now you mentioned a couple of things like injuries. How have you tried to make sure you've stayed healthy throughout this?
So it took me a long time to transition from kind of a heel strike,
Mhm.
which I think was sort of natural to me. When I first started getting into ultras, I had a lot of trouble with Achilles tendonitis, and then several other forms of overuse injury. I haven't had an overuse injury, I think, in maybe a decade or more now, because I got better with the way I run. Probably also helps too that I did change, found the shoes that work. I found these other things that work.
So making sure you've obviously got the right tools, and then there's a learning period. Because you mentioned something earlier that caught my attention, where you're like, you got to make sure you're light on your feet, because the more you pound, right? And so for our
Right.
listeners who have heard us talk about like bone stress, and then even doing a marathon, right? You're going to see some bone marrow edema, and that's not to scare people. It's like, yeah, this stuff swells when you pound the bone for all these miles. The bone will recover, but it's much better if you're lighter on your feet, especially with that accumulated load over the day. So I think that was a really big cue that probably helped us. You got to stay light on your feet, and like sloppy form pound to the ground might cause some issues later.
Yeah.
But then also you mentioned, yeah, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say that the only injuries I've gotten on this run have been one because I keep falling down because I'm clumsy. In part because of my running style, I barely pick my feet up, which is great because it saves energy. But I barely pick my feet up, so I'll trip over the tiniest little crack in the road, and then I fall on my knee, and so I have had some knee problems, but not overuse knee injuries. Just because
Yeah,
I
this is
keep
more impact related.
Just
bashing
trauma.
it against the sidewalk. And then I have had some foot pain, mostly my left foot. That's I think primarily because country roads are beveled, and so
Right.
my left foot is landing lower than my right foot just a little, but it's 70 to 90,000 times a day, and so that just adds up. So I it hurts, and Josh sees me every morning that my first step out of bed is often very painful, and sometimes I fall to the ground. Um, but once I get going, it's better. And one of the things I keep saying is it's not getting any worse. So it gets to a point where it hurts, but it doesn't prevent me from going. So I'm sure I don't know what the doctors would say to that, but I found that sometimes, like with my knee and with my foot, it would probably heal better if I stopped, but they heal without stopping. They just heal slower.
So that brings up an interesting point. And so we were, and I'm not, what this comment is not meant to devalue or say, oh, like, you're not injured when you have pain. But a lot of times when people, one of the challenges, I think, especially in medicine, oftentimes people will have pain, and there may or may not be a tissue injury involved there, and
Right.
helping them understand what's really considered, oh, this is a red flag versus, hey, you know what? Things hurt all the time. Like, this is
Right.
normal, right? Especially if you're running 40 miles a day. How do you, in your brain, is this just normal for you, or just how do you make that decision where you're like, this is a really big warning, or like, hey, this is just gonna hurt. This is just the way it goes. Like, this is normal.
Well, I think that line moves depending on the thing that I'm doing. If it's a training run and something
Yeah.
starts, then I'll walk home, however long it is. And if it's
Right.
and if it's something like this, it's like, well, I'm limping a little in the morning, but if I can get going a couple miles in, my limp mostly goes away. And so I consider I've only found, for me at least, it's just taken a lot of practice and the difference between pain and injury, because that's a really fun line sometimes. So.
What do you do, Shan, either on a daily basis or weekly basis during runs like this to kind of maintain your body? Like, do you foam roll? Do you have other like fascial release tools? Do you stretch, or you just run and then come back and
Yeah.
eat?
So I was curious what you guys would think of this, but I do almost nothing. So I don't stretch, I don't roll, I don't do ice baths or anything like that. Uh,
No massage.
no massages.
Nothing.
I I stretch a little bit before I get out of bed, so that I'm not stepping on something that's just completely, going to strain itself. I haven't seen a lot of scientific evidence that being really flexible, especially for an ultra marathon, is helpful. In fact, it might be harmful.
Right. That's true.
So
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and I used to stretch a lot, thinking that it was helpful, and I was probably hurting myself.
Hmm.
With I just never really felt like I needed massages. I don't seem to have knots. I don't, have that kind of stuff. And my pet theory for like ice baths and things like that is swelling is the body's natural way of protecting itself. So as long as it's tolerable, I kind of, if my ankle's swollen or something like that, I kind of want to, leave it that way.
Uh-huh.
And so I try to avoid it as just anything. I did take some pain meds, Advil, for ibuprofen for my knee for a while, but I've been able to stop taking that. So almost nothing is the short answer.
Well,
That's
when it comes to, oh, go ahead, Matt.
I think, yeah, it's the same thing. I think Andrew's going to say you have to figure out what works for you. It sounds like if it, not everybody needs those things. There's certain, for certain people that might have excessive stiffness, right? And they like, okay, this is just the way my body works. I've lost mobility here. Maybe stretching might work, but what you're doing has kind of been found that, hey, if you don't have that excessive stiffness, you may not need that. And some people end up stretching too much or too little. That's going to totally vary on the person. Same thing with ice baths. We've seen from the evidence that the long-term effects isn't really as great as we thought. It tends to work really, really well for like the high school or college athlete that maybe has back-to-back high-level competitions. You may want to reduce some of the inflammation. But long-term, you're right, it does tend to stunt that. And there's this battle in medicine right now going like, is inflammation good? Is it bad? We know we need it for healing. How do you modulate it? So
Well, good.
I think the biggest thing, I think you're good. The biggest thing that we encourage runners is, I think, making sure you're doing whatever mobility or strength things your body needs. It sounds like you do a little bit of stuff in the morning, which is great if that's what you need. I think what people have to be careful with is that like we always encourage like strength training, stuff like that, but you're in the middle of your event, right? And that's where I wouldn't add anything new that you're not already used to doing, because that could cause an injury, is adding something that you think might be beneficial when you're in the middle of this stuff. And if it's working for you, don't mess with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because so ultra marathoning is a different sport than marathoning. So
Right.
that already, as you probably know, and then expedition length ultra marathon is a totally different sport too. In that,
Right.
and you could tell even by looking at the bodies of the people that are competitive in it. For marathoning, it helps to be really thin and not carrying weight around, and that's true of any long distance, including ultra marathons. But at the same time, and especially these long, many multi-day, multi-week things, you need to have strong legs that look like you could beat them with an iron rod, because you're kind of in that. So, and that takes a bit more muscle mass than you would normally see in somebody that's a 2:30 marathon.
Right. And that's really important, because it's that balance of having enough muscle mass, because if you have that appropriate amount, that's what's going to be taking the shock absorption and vibration, and not your bone. Right. So that makes total sense.
I'm not swift. I am not nimble, but I can run moderate pace in one direction for a very long time.
Which is pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
One trick pony. But
Well, you've got a pretty good trick there.
Right. I would call that a specialization, not a one-trick pony, but that's me.
So I and I'm sure a lot of listeners are curious what you guys are doing for nutrition. So, you can't be surviving months on end on Gatorade and Goose, so I'm assuming you eat real food. So, what's a typical day? And if you had your choice, like, what are your go-tos, or what works best for you?
You want to start with breakfast?
Coffee.
Yeah. Josh,
Oh, yeah.
coffee. I move without coffee, but Josh cannot. So, but we start. Well, we end figure how we're going to get coffee in the morning.
Yes.
And we have a coffee sponsor, K1 Coffee, Capricorn, and like we've been carrying around pounds of it.
That's worth to keep in the trailer, right?
Josh, I'm with you. I'm totally with you on that.
Me too.
That's for me. Well, the overall goal is I kind of have to eat almost as much as I can stomach. I actually don't go through as many calories as some other people that do these kind of things, and there are other people out there that do it. But I'm more like 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day, but for me that's a lot. In the mornings, I have trouble like stomaching a large breakfast before I get going. So we usually will have like something sort of smallish along with our coffee in the morning. Maybe a few hundred calories. Could be something simple like cereal or oatmeal or eggs or hard-boiled eggs or something like that that's quick. And then most of the time, this varies a lot by day, but typically somewhere after like 15 to 20 miles, we'll stop. Maybe this might be 8, 9 o'clock, and we'll have like a big breakfast. Our options are limited, so it's typically American diner food. Focus a lot on protein.
Breakfast of champions.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of other choices, but I like to get a lot of protein, really focus on protein. Plenty of carbs will come, but it's all about getting, enough protein in to repair, because it's constantly in a state of repair. And there's plenty of carbs that'll come along with it. So, maybe a 1,500 calorie breakfast, and then maybe another 10 to 15 miles down the road, whatever lunchish thing we can grab. Gas station food. We're connoisseurs of gas station food. Yeah, like trying to find what we can. And occasionally we'll do like a sports drink, but most of the time I prefer like 0-calorie drinks. My vice is diet soda, so I'll have that mixed in there too. And then at the end of the day, that's when we'll have our big meal. Sometimes Josh has cooked up some good ones inside hotel rooms, but we're primarily eating out, and it's pretty easy to find when you're eating out to get like a 2,000 calorie dinner, a few beers with that, and then that's the day.
Yep. So are you the type of runner who is like, are you eating while you're running, or you do better having like a few bigger feeds throughout the day?
I pretty much eat 3 meals, just bigger ones outside the thing that we're nibbling for going in the morning. Sometimes I'll eat lunch just while I'm going. If it's a really big day, if it's a 50-mile day, I don't want to stop for too long, just because we're not going to get done fast enough. And it's just, Josh sees me, it's really slow when I stop and sit for a minute. You get real stiff. But we usually stop at least once a day for half an hour to an hour, because we have to charge up phones and do that kind of stuff too. So I am working a little bit, so I've got occasionally I'm doing calls on the run and emails and squeeze in all that stuff too. So.
Very impressive. How about you, Josh? How are you fueling for your riding?
I eat about half as much as Shan does.
Yeah.
The day, but I really can't complain about it.
Yeah.
I eating literally almost exactly what you said. I think with the sports drinks or coconut water or things like that, when it's been really, really hot and we're just sweating and melting, that has been. But otherwise, it's almost exactly the same.
And that's different than our normal. Like at home, we kind of survive on salad and vegetables, and so we try to do that too. But that starts to be a lot of fiber to try to shove down.
Yes. Yeah, actually, that reminds me of a question. So, do you train your gut prior to these big runs to prepare for this?
Yeah, in that, like maybe a few 2-3 times a week, and training was having a giant meal. So, but that's pretty too. Just go to brunch, or whatever, and order. I was doing, having some days of 30 to 50 miles. So on those days, it would basically, I'd stop for lunch and have a huge lunch, basically do this kind of thing. We've been talking though, I think we're going to have to go on like some sort of fasting thing to get our stomach back to a normal size when we get.
Yes.
It'll be hard to stop eating. It becomes a chore. The eating it when you think about it, you're like, oh, I'd be able to eat as much as I want whenever, and it's surprising you can always out eat. No matter how many calories you're burning, you can actually eat more than you're burning. I gained 10 pounds before we started because I had lost about 12 on my last crossing, so I had a decent idea. And then within the first 3 weeks, I think I lost most of that weight, and then it pretty much stopped.
Wow.
Weight. So even though we're eating the same, basically plateaued, and I'm fine. I'm certainly not getting too skinny, so it's working out so far.
It would be really interesting on your next cross-country run to have like a exercise physiologist follow you and see how your metabolism changes over the weeks and months. Have you ever had any metabolic testing or anything?
Nothing formal. So yeah, I'm. The only thing we've done is literally grab scales whenever we see some in somebody's house and be like, I wonder what's going on. So that's
Yeah, it's funny you say like you actually get tired of eating. When I was bike racing, I would do stage races, and those are like 5 to 7 days, and you could be racing up to 100 miles on the bike. And you just get tired of putting food in your mouth, but you have to. And, you've got to eat during the races too. And by the end of the race, you're like, I'm done with sugary stuff. I'm done with just eating all these carbs. I just want to eat a salad for the next week or so.
Yeah, and I almost never eat sweets in normal life, but
yeah,
including sports drinks and things like that, I very rarely consume them, and just don't find it very attractive. But having said that, I've become almost a connoisseur on the various sweets you can get at a gas station.
Yep. So what are your if you are stuck with a gas station, what are your go-to things?
The oatmeal cream pies.
Yeah,
they have double cream pies,
Yeah.
which makes my teeth hurt just to think about it. But pie you can get in the smallest space possible, and they're tasty.
Yep. Absolutely. I remember there's a marathon runner, Mikhail Montgomery. She's I think she has a PhD in nutrition, and she's like a 2:30 or maybe even faster marathoner. But she's posted on social media about how not everybody has access to Morton or UCAN or some of these more expensive products. So here's what you can get at a gas station if you're marathon training or doing other serious training that one isn't expensive and two you don't have to send away for.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, we're only just now getting into the areas of the country where you can get something besides your typical slush.
Yes.
Now there's all these GMO cage free, that doesn't exist in a lot of parts.
No. Now in Connecticut, you'll go to a gas station and there'll be 3 kinds of coconut water and aloe water.
the flavored drink, and not the same.
No.
It's $1 instead of $5. So
Yeah.
Right, yeah. You've got to change the budget a little bit. So what have some of the most either memorable parts of your trip been? I mean, I saw you got a police escort over a bridge. Tell us a little bit about that. That looked pretty cool. Yeah.
That was really interesting because it was both for us, I think, a lot of fun, but at the same time, it's the only spot in the entire East Coast Greenway where there's a bridge that doesn't have a pedestrian crossing. So you have a trail crossing. You can ride your bike across it, but only on the weekends, and you have to there's like a light, there's a button you press there. There's like a warning light that lets our drivers know that there's a cyclist on the bridge, because there's just no.
It's worse than Route 17 to cross this.
Oh
There's
boy.
barriers and maybe a 6-inch shoulder.
So because we were working with the Alliance and some of their supporters, we were able to get an escort across. Otherwise, we would have just had to get in a car and drive across. That's really the only option. So it was a lot of fun, but it was also something that we wanted to shine a spotlight on, that not everybody's gonna be able to do that.
Right. Yeah.
That
And if if a pedestrian wanted to cross that river, you would have to travel like hundreds of miles.
That's been true a lot of times. Like if I try to Google map pedestrian routes, a lot of times it sends me many, many, many miles out of the way. So that's another thing that they're kind of working on too. It's been so far focused on being kind of a cycling route. But I want to point out that you don't have to run the whole thing, but you
Right.
to go on places as a pedestrian. If you bike it, you should be able to walk on it, and vice versa. And
Right.
a lot of what's being worked on. We've had a ton of memorable moments. There's so many that's hard to like pick things out. I think just the general what's been interesting is we've woken up in a different place every single day for 57 days.
Yeah.
So and we're a lot of that is meeting people's places, and we could see how everybody lives. We slept in a school bus at night. That was interesting.
That's awesome. How did that happen?
It was really run down on the outside, but that wasn't important. But just stuff, the wildlife we've seen, and even when you're outside for 10 hours a day, you can't help but see some things.
Yeah. You got chased by a rooster, right?
I did. Long ways too, like half a mile. I didn't know that they would do that.
Wow, you meant like the rooster equivalent of you.
I thought it was a dog. I turned and I'm like, should I keep running? I'm like, well, they've got paws and beaks, and like, so that's gonna hurt. And because I don't want to hurt his rooster. And then I'm laughing at myself. I'm all embarrassed because I'm running away from a chicken. I was catching a little video. So.
There is a video of it? Oh, gosh.
Scared. I was yelling and running and flailing first minute or two. But he chased me. I had time to get my phone out.
That's great. So what's coming up? You're running through Connecticut. So what's the terrain like that you're going to be on the next few days?
Mostly, well, after we get off the Hudson River Greenway, it's all roads, I believe, for 60 or so miles, the first 60 Connecticut. There might be some, I don't know if there are any paths down there until we get to New Haven onto the Cheshire.
Oh, okay.
And it's a lot hillier, right?
Yeah, not yet. It will be after we get through Hartford, on the other side of Hartford.
Okay, so east of the river then.
Yeah.
But it's
Oh, yeah, as you start heading further north.
It's not as hilly as other parts of Connecticut, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as bad as riding around where we do in Southbury.
Right.
Yes, that's good.
More hilly, so.
And are there a lot of meetups planned with like local runners and cyclists?
A little bit, yeah. We're still working on that.
Yeah,
So.
there's interest, but no firm plans yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. And so how's fundraising going?
Yeah, I think we're closing in on 7,000. Our goal is $10 a mile, so $30,000. So we've got a long ways to go. But people can go to our website, East Coast Greenway Expedition.com, and find the donate there. There's also all of our social contacts and Strava and emails, phone numbers. So
yeah, there's been a Facebook fundraiser out
so
there as well. So
there's lots of
ways.
easy ways to just follow and click, and there you go. Or just follow and find us and come, meet us on the trail or whatever.
Yeah, awesome. So, of course, it's way too early to think about this, but do you guys have any ideas in the back of your mind for the next crazy trip?
No.
No.
I saw that look and like, no, please, not right now. We have 1,000 miles to go. Don't ask us this question. I'm just kidding.
Oh. Yeah, you had a tandem bike.
Oh, I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah. That's a hard pass for me.
So, do you guys have any other advice for people who might be interested in doing ultras or doing a multi-day run like this? Anything we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, if people, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about what I've done about 7 or 8 of these big multi-day things for charity, and being able to do it as a fundraiser and to raise awareness for charity has made it extra special and adds kind of a different level. And if people want to do that, the advice I would give people is to reach out to that charity that you're potentially going to be fundraising for. It's I've seen a lot of people do these things and realize that they're not really organized. So reach out to the charity. And a big part of what helps you with fundraising is getting some visibility. So work with their PR and marketing people. Don't depend on yourself to find the local news. Like a lot of times those charities, they have much more experience in that. And so, work together to kind of make it into something. And then you'll find that you'll meet a lot of new people that way and just a whole new level of fun. Or not, or just go out into the woods and do it yourself and don't tell anybody. So it's do it, but that's my piece of advice.
I've done the second one before.
Yeah. Something as a fundraiser, you'll be a lot more successful if you collaborate with that charity in a strategic way.
Mm-hmm. And Josh, what advice would you give to people like loved ones or friends who are trying to help someone do something as big as this? Like, what have you learned so far?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm not prepared to answer that question. How to support someone?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess just, really understand what they need. I ask a lot of questions, and fewer now, but, just, I don't know.
We're pretty well
there.
We know each other pretty well, so we don't have to mess with it too much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just know that there'll be times when they're probably pretty tired or they need something, and it's like he doesn't get cranky. But I imagine there could be a person that you're supporting cranky doesn't. And then sometimes, you just don't need anything at all.
Well, I am so excited for you two and the rest of your journey. For our listeners, you can check out Josh and Shan's trip on East Coast Greenway Expedition.com. Please donate if you can. This is such a great cause, especially if you live on the East Coast or if you plan on visiting the East Coast. Having a trail like this where you can run and bike safely is such an important thing. And as someone who lives near the East Coast Greenway, I can tell you it makes such a difference in our community. And as a practitioner, being able to tell people, hey, if you want to go walk, there's this great safe place where you can go do it. You don't have to go on the roads and worry about cars. So there's so many reasons that we need the East Coast Greenway and more places like that. So thank you so much for what you guys are doing. You're amazing. Everyone go donate to their cause. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to everybody who are listening or watching. You can follow us on all of our social media channels, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. As always, we'd love you to leave a review or a comment. It definitely helps grow our show. So thanks again so much for joining, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Andrea.
Thanks, guys.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's a great time.